Harmony. That's such a beautiful word, and yet sometimes it's so difficult to attain. Paul exhorts us in Romans 12:16. He says this, "Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight." We have to be careful when we look at this particular verse. We have three statements that at first glance seem somewhat disconnected, but they really are not. In typical Pauline fashion, he uses the same word three times in this one particular verse. And so it's more than just meets the eye. He says, live in harmony, phroneo. Do not be haughty, phroneo. Never be wise, phronimos, a derivative of that word. All have to do with the mindset. So when it says harmonize, it's not with the secular world. Rather, it's with fellow believers. Harmony is a bit different from keeping the peace or living at peace with your neighbor. We'll see that addressed in verse 18, and we'll talk about it the next time that we're together. The word harmony is the word for mindset or attitude. It has to do with our will, our affections, our emotions, our conscience. We find the same word in Philippians chapter 2. Listen to the word. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interest of others. Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God something to be grasped. In other words, we have the same way of thinking among ourselves. What kind of way? The kind that Jesus had. The kind that seeks harmony. The kind that is not haughty, not prideful, but is willing to do the menial task of serving others. It's not a know-it-all attitude. Rather, this is a caution concerning pride. And pride, the child of pride, is always prejudiced. Now let's look back at the beginning of Romans chapter 12. He says, not to be conformed to this world, but to be transformed by the renewing of what? Your mind. That by doing this, you will test the will of God. What's the good and perfect will of God in your life? So we find here in verse 16, part of the will of God. Don't let your pride get in the way of being the beauty of Christ. Rather, have the mindset of Christ, which was to associate with the lowly. In other words, Christ came to serve, and serve is what he did, and so should we.